So this is part 2 of the GenerateBlocks tutorial, where we dive deeper into how to actually style text and images and containers. If you haven't watched the first one, then please watch that first. You'll find the link in the description below. So let's get started. Again, let's start with the top containers. So here we have the layout. Let's explain what those things are here. The layout, usually you wouldn't touch it. It's set as it is. If you know what you're doing, then you can start to play around with those. But if you're new to WordPress or to styling in general, those are all CSS styles for blocks. Probably best not to play around with it. So you probably keep the layout as it is. Siding, there it gets more interesting. So here what you can do is set the the width and the height of, for example, a container. You would normally not use this. What do you use? Maybe, for example, here, it automatically sets the sizing for the inner container to I don't know what the size is here, something like 1200 pixels, for example, so that when you have the website, basically if you click on here, how wide it is like 1200 pixel maximum width. But then if it goes, or if the image gets, if the window gets smaller, then this one adapts as well, this container. Width, for example, we can try, let's set it to 500 and click save. You see already here that it adapts to 500, then it will get smaller. But then the problem is here, when you set it to 500 and you, for example, have a phone, let's set this to 300, then what you get is it starts to scroll. So it goes over, the container goes over the image, over the boundaries of the phone, of the screen, and then it doesn't look good. So it's best not to set a fixed width. You can set it to percent, so 100%, for example. So you can pick between pixels, percent, and other things. If you set it to 100%, then it will, or let's say to 80%, so we see it better. Save. So then here, then it's like 80% of the screen size. But then again, here the screen is bigger than that. So here the maximum, he would take the maximum width, which is 1200. The same is true for height. So, and then if we don't have anything, then it just automatically goes to 100% width. So here, these areas you can play around with, but remember not to set pixel width and pixel height you can do. This is no problem, but width, don't set a fixed width for the pixels, with pixels. And let's go to spacing. Here we already have, we have two things here basically, padding and margin. Margin here is set to auto, so that the window here, this container is basically centered. So what we want to do maybe is add another container. For that we do click, maybe here, click add before, and then we'll turn this to the container. Then we take this, get it in there, take this, get it in here. We just drag and drop them. So we have a new container inside this container now. And here we remove the padding. That's better. So here for this one, we can now add, because the text here is like at the very, like if we click save, see what we have before we go on. Now we don't have any padding at all. So what we do now is add spacing here. So we add let's say we add 60 on top, 60 on bottom, 40 here and 40 here. Let's see what that looks like. So now we have 60 on top, 60 on bottom, 40 here, 40 here. So this is padding. This is inside the editor basically. Maybe give this container another background color as well, just so we know what we're dealing with. Let's make it black. So here we have, that's the padding. The padding is basically inside gaps. Yeah, so margin is a little bit more tricky. So ideally, don't touch it if you don't have to. Padding is very predictable. Margin is not always predictable because it depends on other containers. And so margin you can use maybe left and right if you want. So for example, we can try here, left here, 10 here and here. So you see this is then outside of the container. But ideally margin don't use. If you want spacing, use padding. It's a lot more predictable. So next one what we have is typography. So that's for the text basically. So here we can already use like between the various headings. So what you should do is always have one H1 and then below several H2 usually. And then under each H2 you have H3, under H3 you have H4. So what you shouldn't do is have one H1 and then the next heading be a H4, because that will just mess up the structure of the site, and search engines usually don't like this. So what we can do is we can change the text color, as we already seen. We can change the font size. Let's say this one will make super big, 80. Font weight, make it super thin. So usually the standard is 400. 400 is the normal width. 100 is usually the thinnest. Bold, so you have bold here. This one is usually 700. And 900 is extra bold. So let's go with 100. And font styles, usually standard, but you can make it italic, back to normal. You can say where it should be, like they're aligned, center, left, right. Text transform, you can make it like only capital letters, only lowercase, or old, what we had anyway. Let's make this a small t, nothing. Then it's like make every word basically capitalized. Let's go with this. And text decoration, you can underline on top or strike it through. We don't need anything of those. Line height, that's more interesting. So usually like that basically tells the browser how much space to put on top and bottom of each line. So 1 would be no space at all. If we have 2, then we have more space. We have to go with this maybe to see it more properly. So 1 is like you only have basically minus space between it. 1.5, it's more space, and 2, even more space. Yeah, you can play around with that. Usually you can just leave it as it is. Letter spacing means you can make add space between the letters. So 1 or 10, then it's like even more. Or you can also make it negative. -10, then it goes together. Or -1, -3, then it's like a lot closer together. The font family, usually you have some standard fonts, or you can set fonts in the customize area. And white space, you usually never need this. So that's for the text. Next one is background. We already tried I tried a little bit there. So usually you go with containers for the background. So you can simply get the color. That's the easiest one. Or, which is a little bit more tricky, because it's not the way it should be, I think. Let's go to the outside container. If you want to set an image, you need to go here. You need to change between those two. So what the difference between those two is, like, those are the things needed more often, and those are more detailed styling. So if you want to set the image, you can click on browse, use the image, and then it will be set on the outside. We can't see it here. Maybe remove this. Set it for the very outside container. Yes, it's easy to see. So now we have one here. Also, I'll make it smaller. Then we still have it. So the background image always trumps the background color. So remove it again. The background image. Go back to the background color. You can add other things here as well. Background origin. But usually you just leave it as default. So then we have, go to the inside edit again for the borders. So borders you can do two things with. One is you actually set a border. Let's set the border 3 and then make it, let's say, yellow. Then you have a border around the container. And what you can also do is add radius, which means you get rounded corners. Let's use 36 pixels here, 36 here, and then here we make it a lot bigger, 200, 200. Looks like this. So you can play around with that if you need rounded borders. It's very useful for images as well. So if we go to our image here, we go to that image and we want to have rounded borders for that image, we can do that. If you want to use the same rounded borders on each corner, then we simply do it like this. Click Save. And we have rounded corners here. Again, if you want to make the rounded borders smaller for various, like we can start like with, let's say, 200, really big ones. Go 100, don't go that extreme. Then we have 75 for tablet and 50 for mobile. So then it, basically the rounding gets smaller and smaller, the smaller the screen gets. It's something you can do. So go back to the top. What else do we have? Position is something, if you're not familiar with CSS styling, then you should not play around with this. Just leave it as it is. Effects, media, and lists, those are more tricky. So you probably don't need this for now. So some other things you might need. What you might, for example, do is have a link. Let's add a link here. Let's link to your own page. And so the link currently would look like this, but we want to style the link. So what we can do is click on the link and then click on hover. And for the links first. So we want to set a color. Let's set it to red. Let's set red and don't have it underlined. Click Save. So we have the new link. And then if we want to have it differently styled when you hover over the link, let's say you want to make it green and underline, and click Save. And that should be done as well. When you click over, hover over it. Oh, it's the whole section now. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, Harvard links, that's what I wanted. So if you want, let's make this green and underline, and click save. Then we should have this for the link only. So those we can jump between various places in the text. Depending on the element you're using, there will be different options here on the top. And then again, for example, if you want to have it differently on mobile, so if you want the links on mobile to be, let's say, blue, then you simply go to the mobile tab, click on links, click blue for the links, and you will see that if we then go to mobile, you will see that we have a blue link here. Yes. Perfect. What else is there to explain? These are, I think these are the most important things for styling. So here again, make sure sometimes you need to look on both. It's a little bit tricky for GenerateBlocks. It's not very intuitive. Also sometimes when you are in, for example, in mobile, parts here won't show up. So you will always have to go back to desktop, and then you will actually see the whole list of things here, especially for the background image or for replacing an image is quite important. Yes, on the image part, like if you want to keep the styling for an image and just replace the image, you just click on browse again and pick another image. I don't have a second image now, but you get the gist. What else is the... That's pretty much it, I think, for the basics. If you want... Oh yeah, maybe for the... Let's go to the grid, because that's quite important. That's the last thing to look into. The grid. So here we actually have to go into the layout, even though I told you not to touch it. But for the grid it's important. So for the grid, what is important here is maybe add an image, so we can add after an image. Image, media library. Then what you can do on the side here is like you can delete it, or you can duplicate it, which is quite useful. Or you can add before, add after, we used it before. Or you can also copy it. So if you copy it, for example, and then copy, yes, you'll see that it copies. Then we go to this one and add after. And then if you click on Ctrl V, then you add the picture, which is quite nice. You can also duplicate it and just drag and drop it. That's also an option. So now we have those. Currently looks like this here. So what we now want to do is change, for example, if you change now to this, then you would have basically the first two containers in the first line and the next ones in the next line. But we keep it like this. Here the column gaps, those are important. So if we change them to 0, the row would be if we have another row, so we can keep that at 0, but the gap here is more important. Then we don't have any gap anymore. If we change it to, we can also change it to pixel, for example. If we change it to 60 pixels, and it will be a lot bigger, the gap. This is very useful especially because on the side you want to add back gaps. So if you do this with paddings within the container, it's a lot more tricky with grids. So ideally use this one for the gaps between the various columns. Then also what we can do here is for different screen sizes, have different amount of columns, for example. So for tablet we have 2, for example, and already that's automatic anyway. For mobile we have 1. So if we then reload this and check out, and here for mobile we have the 3 columns, one below each other. And for example, for 800 we have 2, and for 1200 we have 3. Yes. Also, if you want to add padding on the side, it's usually quite nice to have like one container for the full width and then the inside container. And if you want to add spacing, so that, for example here, the one we just had with 800, currently like everything is like directly at the side. So if you want to change this, we can simply add like 40, for example, on the left, 40 on the right. That should be the same all across the website, otherwise like it looks weird. But then we have like 40 here and 40 here. Yes, good. That should be it, pretty much. So if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. And if you can't get things done yourself, please look in the description on how to get in touch with me. If you want to work with me, would be very happy to help wherever I can. Okay, thanks for your time and see you soon.